Oh, yeah, the television crews are here already. Well, we're trying to get the site ready for the dedication this afternoon at 5. So we're out here throwing a little dirt around, setting up some stands. And later on I'll go home and shave and get ready to make my speech.
Mark, you got everything you need? Got my shovel. How you doing?
Project looks good enough. Got some support. Maybe the more federal money for all the department.
Well, we'll probably, we'll probably do it. We might even want to. Is that permanent or what else? That's temporary. That's great. This takes a long time. You gotta be patient on these things. So.
We're going to try to get another grant from the state for Hobbs and Thomas houses to do some really nice.
How are you?
Okay.
Are they doing the dedication?
There's a whole bag of them in the shop. You know where we are.
That's the only level I have is that one up there, Dave. On the deck.
Huh? Oh, maybe. 80? Well, 80 in September.
He's gonna be 80 in September. What's your birthday?
28.
Hey.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
I'm the 26th and
You're
you're
2
the...
days older than me.
Ain't this some kind of fun?
Huh? Got away from it.
Our Masonic Lodge, they don't have to march up anywhere, and they're good to go.
Are they going to do anything?
First came over and dug a pond on your
Can
property.
you believe it? So where do you want the choir to sing then? Just without risers? Do you want it to be up here?
Judy,
And the podium's here. Okay.
Back or something like
Great. That's great.
You
Hi, I'm
wanna-
Judy.
that. You want to try to work out of the bed?
well, I'm still waiting to hear back from Saturday.
I hadn't
Do you have a
seen
small
it yet,
room?
but
Hey, Chubby, do you have a small room?
it would be best.
Go right up there. I've got a mic that don't have to be real close to me, so
Okay. It's not a directional.
got a snake for... Snake it away, because they're...
One of those
Marcy.
little ones.
Well, could you put in...
Let's see how it looks like it does.
Tell a lot of great
That's
things.
only-
But at Lawrence, the time from the left. Well, that's what we're-
So, how much time do we have?
I would have been more than
2 minutes, 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
No, we don't
You
wanna
want
go.
them,
That's what I'm thinking.
you know what? You want them to be saying, my suggestion is, since you're right at the front,
Don't worry about
The amount of
that.
time it will take to go from here to there.
I'll cover you.
exactly how you feel.
Because I thought...
Yeah, people out. You'll get some people who sit down, but there's going to be traffic going back and forth.
I don't know. Maybe while people are showing up, which is
We stayed in bed for, yeah, I mean, he's definitely at the point now where I can't
take it anymore.
Yeah, so it's a good idea to stop it. Yeah, I think I'm going to try.
What do you say you have a lot of work to do? Grounds, I guess?
Well, some work on the ground. I told you that I have to do it, and I told you that they would show up before the... It's only a one. That just takes out the handrail. I mean, if the handrail can't bring...
people in the front row.
Oh, you pulled the template off that one.
Only on one end, yeah, and then we can go.
Two until it starts? Yeah.
Talk.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Cap has done a wonderful thing. Okay, they're talking.
Yeah.
Until.
Do you know the name of the kid that was supposed to go out and get the other guy that was supposed to show up here? You could be armed.
I don't see some weird looking packages in the bucket.
Pardon?
that were ever.
Occupy that ridge over there. When was it formed? You and one of the other. Talked about here.
I went to the door, like different.
Yeah.
Sandwiches. Yeah.
Well, anyways, it was where. Yeah.
I'll be there.
Just right at 5 o'clock. Hey, this time around. In Delaware, the buses are having trouble getting around because some of it's parked. It looks like too far out. So the station's stuff.
So deeply in love with yourself as a piano.
Marshall first. I'm not sure that was the case.
I wasn't sure you would be here.
I am. I wasn't sure you'd be here. The guy's a Kyle.
I thought you were. Oh my God, Ryan, look.
We're not going to sing anything? Yeah. Just go sing something. Okay. Start with singing. Give it free.
It'd be good for all those places in the parking kids.
Looks like the stage.
We're taking the second floor.
Second
On
row
this
on
side?
the far side.
Far side.
Second far side.
are here representing the 9th and 10th Cavalry units established by Congress in 1866. All right. Representing the Western Star Lodge. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Judy Wright, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the dedication of the Hobbs Park Memorial. The Reverend Tim Miller will now lead us in prayer.
And tyranny is tyranny, whether under the garb of law or in opposition to it. So thought and acted our ancestors, and so let us think and act. We are not alone in this contest. Every pulsation in Kansas pulsates to the remotest artery of the body politic, and I seem to hear the millions of freemen and the millions of bondsmen in our own land, the patriots and philanthropists of all countries, the spirits of the revolutionary heroes, and the voice of God, all saying to the people of Kansas, do your duty. We honor John Spear, who came here and founded one of the first newspapers in Lawrence. John Spear, who knew a great deal of tragedy, though he managed to survive Quantrill's raid. Some of his sons did not. We also honor the great history of African Americans, and their words like freedom, sweet and wonderful to say, on my heartstrings freedom sings all day, every day. There are words like liberty that almost make me cry. If you had known what I knew, you would know why.
Thank you, Tim. As Tim had mentioned, the monument we're here to consecrate today honors the memory of John Spear and the brave men and women of the New England Immigrant Aid Society, who almost 150 years ago sacrificed all to establish Lawrence as a beacon of freedom on the Western Front.
In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea.
across the boundary of time to the troubled and bloody beginnings of our state and the city of Lawrence. We are here to celebrate the ordinary people who helped establish our town and to celebrate the exemplary individuals such as John Spear, who struggled against enormous odds and personal threats to publish the anti-slavery message. We are stepping across the boundaries of ignorance and indifference of our own day to learn from our past and to continue building community across all real and perceived boundaries. I think all of us want to know and understand more deeply the positive aspects of our history so that we can continue forward on our journey towards liberty and justice with hope and vision to guide us. The one moment, it seems to me, that most widely remembered among citizens of Lawrence is the sacking of Lawrence by the Border Ruffians led by William Quantrill. I believe we have so many more moments to celebrate, including the slow destruction of the walls of segregation and the transformation of Haskell Boarding School into an institution of higher learning dedicated to the preservation of Native American culture, history, and values.
Additionally, their fundraising efforts resulted in gifts, large and small, to create this legacy for Lawrence. Through their tenacity and genuine love for this city, the Hobbs Park Memorial has today become a reality. Mark Kaplan moved to Lawrence in 1969. His passion with this project was to ensure that our rich Lawrence history would be here for our children and our children's children. Please help me welcome the project director of Hobbs Park Memorial, Mark Kaplan.
To our media event here. What we're trying to do with this project is remind people here in Lawrence and across this country that the settlement of this region of northeast Kansas resulted in the absolute saving grace for this nation. It instigated the Civil War, which was a conflict which needed to happen to rid the scourge of slavery in the old colonies down south. The country wouldn't have survived in its present form were it not for the Immigrant Aid Society from Boston and the other settlers like Mr. Spear, who came from western Pennsylvania almost on cue, dismantling his presses and his life there. He was already nearly middle-aged at the time, in 1854 when the Kansas-Nebraska bill was passed. And he got on his horse and rode out here. They had to break their presses down into parts and hide them in crates like the Beecher's Bibles of yore, that when a lot of the weapons that came in early didn't cross Missouri easily, because Missouri was during the Civil War it was controlled by the Union Army, but before the war, in these months and years out here in Kansas where the war started, everything, any kind of contraband that came in here had to be hidden. Mr. Spear lived in a home. He had 3 different homes just over here at my left shoulder. Out there about where the center field fence stands now. His first 2 homes were destroyed by Missouri raiding parties, and his 3rd was burned on the day of the raid, but his wife helped to put the fire out. I got a little, an email was sent today by a relative of Mr. Spear. I'd never seen before. One of the people in our organization handed it to me just a few minutes ago, and I'll read it. It says, I'm related to, this gentleman's name is Marvin Henry. I'm related to John I. Spear. He was my great-great-uncle. His brother, Robert B. Spear, was my great-great-grandfather, and his daughter, Ella Spear, was my great-grandmother. Hello. I do live in the area, but unfortunately I have a prior commitment in Denver and will not be able to attend the John Spear dedication ceremony. I'm extremely proud of John Spear. No other person had more involvement in keeping this state free from slavery, and few suffered more than he in fighting the attempt to beat the citizens of that time into submission. He lost 2 sons, his newspaper editor, his newspaper office, and nearly his own life in the process. He was deeply involved in politics of the times, serving several terms in the state legislature. He served as a state printer, and he was involved in the evolution of one of the railroads of the era. As a Kansas history buff of long standing, I can think of no other person in this state's history that had more dedication and involvement in the effort to establish a free and open society in the turbulent times in which he lived. I will be out of state for about 3 weeks, but rest assured that I will visit the memorial first thing when I return. Thank you very much for inviting me to the dedication. Nothing except the commitment to be in Denver to care for my aging mother would keep me away today. Marvin E. Henry. Like Mr. Spear is a real giant in American history, and it's very ironic that he's disappeared from the shelf of memory so quickly, and it alerts us to why it's so important to maintain a vigilance in defense of liberty and the rule of law and the power of faith and the power of government, the good that government can do. I think too often in the last 20 years, government has been derided as a kind of a brake on our otherwise momentous progression we could make. I think we have to remind ourselves that the formation of government, and especially the Republican form of government that we have here in the States, is one of the most important elements in our lives. It separates us from the wash of medieval culture, which controlled most of human existence until just a few years ago. The documents such as the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were held in high regard by people that founded Lawrence and people that made lifetime commitments to erase the blot of slavery from this country. And it's not ancient history. The legacies of slavery are still with us today. We have to maintain a vigilant, assault on the enemies of freedom. I'd like to thank everyone that's helped with the project. We couldn't have done it without City Manager Mike Wilgen and all the city commissioners. The last 9 or 10 city commissioners have served in the last 4 or 5 years. My friend and neighbor, Commissioner Marty Kennedy, who vetted these proposals for what most thought was an absolutely absurd idea to move this house to this park and dedicate it as a monument. County Manager Craig Weinow, all the people that have worked for us, our contractor Ernie Fantini, our architect Stan Hurley, and Julia Mathias. We couldn't have done it without them. I couldn't have done it without my mother and father, who are both here today, still alive and ticking. I introduce my friend and co-worker in this project, Jim McCrary, who's lived in the neighborhood for many years. This was actually his idea. Jim McCrary.
Thank you all for coming. Mark and I have both been interviewed with the media for over 4 years, and until today, I never admitted, or thought I should admit, that it was my idea that we sat over on Charlie's East Side Bar and Grill steps, and I said, well, let's move the house to Hobbs Park, and we laughed. And, but today I'm more than proud to admit that yes, indeed, it was my idea. That's all it was my idea, and without the help of so many people that I couldn't possibly name, but will be recognized today and in the future, something grand has happened. And to quote the late Jerry Garcia, what a long, strange trip it's been. It's just beyond my wildest dreams to stand here today in this place called Hobbs Park, in front of this house in this memorial. And I was asked by a reporter this morning, why do you want to save this house? And my answer was, because it was there. Because it survived. Because so little of this architecture gets saved. These kinds of structures have been lost over the years. The fancy buildings, God bless them, get saved. The Watkins Museums and the Union Station. But this house, this small house, a complete house, would sit inside of the great room of one of the houses being built out in West Lawrence. This house survived, and today it is a public monument to the people that built it. And I hope it does much to encourage the survival and preservation of other buildings. And I don't want to make an announcement before it's time, but yesterday the Reverend at the AME Church went to Topeka, and as I understand it, our neighbor over here at 9th in New York, the AME Church, is on its way to go to the National Historic Register. I also want to thank and name the people that worked on this house since it's been in Hobbs Park. The masons, the bricklayers, the carpenters. I want to name those people: Ernie Fantini, Josh Davis, Scott Basil, Caleb Clipsham, Jerry McCormick, Scott Martz, and Matt Jones, who so carefully put this house back together. The other thing I love about being here at this corner at the Hobbs Park Memorial is that it's impossible to get to this site without driving through East Lawrence. You have to come through our neighborhood. You have to, if you choose, come down East 9th Street and see the AME Church and the Turn Hall and the nail shop and the detail shop and the tire shop and the printer shop and the plumber shop and the only working class tavern in East Lawrence, Charlie's East Side Bar and Grill. And we love these people. And these are the people like 100 years ago that Timothy and Bridget Murphy, the people that built this house. We don't know much about it. There were no plans, and Julia will speak about that later, I'm sure. But today in East Lawrence, it's the same. The people that keep this town, this community working are here, and a lot of them are here today. And to me, this house stands in its humble perfection. If ever the old saw, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. This house stands as the foundation to our great memorial to John Spear and the founders of Lawrence. And it will stand, too, for the community that we call today Old East Lawrence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And under the musical direction of Sister Anita Martin, the Praise Temple Church will sing Sweet Low, Sweet Chariot.
Thank you all for being here today. It means a great deal to those of us who've been involved in this project over the years. A few weeks ago, my father called me, and I was still trying to decide on a topic to speak about today. We were about to say goodbye when he stopped and he said, "So, is that old house still around?" You see, my father is the sort of practical man who thinks that when things become old and decrepit, we should just bulldoze them over and get on with our lives. So in the 4 years off and on that I've been involved in this project, it's been a wellspring of good-natured teasing going both directions. After I assured him that the house was still here, I told him it was looking pretty good, too. It's been repointed, all the masonry looks great. It's got a new roof, new windows, new doors where they were needed. It even has a new porch, I told him. "That sounds great," he said. I said, "Well, yeah, I think so." And then he paused again and he said, "Now tell me, why would anyone go to all the trouble to save that little old house?" And so as I hung up the phone, I realized that he helped me decide what I should talk about. I'd like to share with you my answer to that question. Why would anyone go to all the trouble to save this little house? I think there's a larger question behind that, a larger issue, and it's larger than any house or any block of houses. It's about preservation, and it's about why we save anything at all. And mainly, it's because we begin to know ourselves through our history. Until the 60s and 70s, preservation in this country was much more of a haphazard thing. It happened in fits and starts here and there, but mainly it happened by chance. Today we practice preservation as much by choice as we do by chance, and practicing it by choice is a much different prospect. I liken it more to writing a history book. Each building that we save adds another page to that book. By choosing to save something, we are editing. And the choices that we make say as much about us as they do about the past. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to be as forthcoming and as complete and as unbiased as we can in the writing of that history. In Lawrence, we are very fortunate. There were citizens here from very early who cared about history. They saw it as something meaningful. This town, after all, was founded for a purpose that forever entwined it with our national history. Historic is an adjective that we often use to describe our town to other people. And we have many to thank that our downtown is what it is today, that we still have neighborhoods like Old West Lawrence and like Oriad. But now I would ask that each of you for a moment reflect on the protected historic buildings that we have in this town and all of the structures that fall within the protective circles that they create. Now imagine that Lawrence is entirely gone. The only thing that's left are those historic buildings. What sort of history do you think that they would tell? I suspect that it would be primarily of well-to-do neighborhoods, high-style houses, and commercial districts. But is that a complete history? Does that really tell you everything that you need to know about Lawrence, or any other town for that matter? Are there missing pages, I suppose is my real question. Where were the everyday working people like many of us? Who was the carpenter who built those houses? Where did he live? What about the painter who painted them? What about the clerks in the stores downtown? Or the seamstresses, or the laborers in the mills and factories along the river? Didn't they exist? Wouldn't they be part of that history book? Well, of course they should be. And they lived here in East Lawrence, or perhaps across the river in North Lawrence. And many of them were immigrants or descendants of immigrants. They were the working class of their day. The truth is that no town, now or then, could make it without working class people. And a further truth is that immigrants of all sorts, from all eras, have added to the character of our town. Those people arguably contributed as much to the building of our community as any factory owner or banker. They are the missing pages in the book that we have written so far. This house is part of our collective history, and now it's a new page in that book. I would put to you all that this history, this part of our history, is no less deserving of our respect than any other, and so it should be saved. And I am very grateful to have been involved in this project because so many people put so much effort into saving this one little old house.
Is a professor of American Studies at the University of Kansas and the author of many books and articles. Having had residential fellowships at Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and Stanford universities, he has received numerous awards for his work, including fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Bill received KU's prestigious Hope Award this last year and is currently leading efforts to build a monument to the native son of Lawrence, African-American poet Langston Hughes. Please help me welcome Professor Bill Tuttle.
really great to be here on such a glorious Sunday afternoon. Before I begin my remarks, I want to extend a special tribute to Mark Kaplan, who conceived this project and mobilized community commitment and financial resources which turned this dream into a reality. Mark, self-effacing and now maybe even self-deprecating, but I'm on, is not only a public relations genius, but also a magnificent citizen who in so many ways is a spiritual heir for abolitionist ancestors. Thank you, Mark, and Jim, and Bob, and Lee, and so many others making this dream come true. As Judy mentioned, I'm a professor of American Studies at KU, and I moved to Lawrence in 1967. But long before I came here, long before I accepted a teaching position here, I had read about the importance to American history of Lawrence and of Bleeding, Kansas. I learned that this history was both glorious and heroic. And it was to honor this history that several years ago, I became a member of the steering committee of the Hobbs Park Memorial Committee. As a teacher and writer of American history, I have urged support for this project, not only to relocate the Murphy Brownsick House from the 900 block of Pennsylvania to Hobbs Park, but also to create a monument to the founding and early history of Lawrence. I think the Hobbs Park Memorial is a magnificent way to remember and to honor Lawrence's abolitionist and civil rights past. First, Lawrence was the place where John Brown, John Spear, Jim Lane, Thomas Barber, and other abolitionists waged guerrilla warfare against chattel slavery. And many, like Barber, sacrificed their lives for the cause. Moreover, as a major station on the Underground Railroad, Lawrence represented the promised land of freedom to numerous men, women, and children escaping the bonds of chattel slavery. And with the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, the territory became Bleeding, Kansas, the nation's battleground over the expansion of slavery. Then, triumphant in 1860, Free State Kansas adopted a constitution that prohibited slavery. And African Americans in neighboring states, especially Missouri, fled to Kansas to live and work as free people. The census reflected this influx. The African American free population jumped from fewer than 200 in 1855 to over 12,500 in 1865. In 1861, Kansas entered the Union as a free state. It had been a turbulent era, but it was far from over. As the noted historian and our fellow Laurentian Richard Sheridan has written, Kansas was born in a struggle for liberty and freedom, a struggle that raised the curtain on the Civil War and sounded the death knell of slavery. It is clear, I think, that the city of Lawrence would not exist without the Kansas River. Indeed, without the Kaw, it would have been located here in the first place. But it is equally clear, I think, that Lawrence would not exist were it not for the struggle for freedom that took place here. The abolitionist movement was the civil rights movement of its day, and Lawrence was at the center of the struggle. Moreover, many Laurentians died for freedom, including the 200 men and boys killed by Quantrill's raiders who burned the town on August 21, 1863, 138 years ago, almost to this day. Among the brave people murdered by Quantrill's raiders were two sons of John and Elizabeth Spear, whose brick farmhouse stood right here on the grounds of the Hobbs Park Memorial. John Spear, an abolitionist, was the publisher of Lawrence's first newspaper, the Tribune. He was targeted for execution, as were his sons. On that fateful day, two of the Spears' sons lost their lives, and the Tribune building was torched. But a third son retaliated and killed one of the members of the Marauders in front of the Spears homestead in East Lawrence, on the very land again that 138 years later comprises this memorial. As we know, Lawrence has been likened to a phoenix, rising again from the ashes. And clearly this has been our history. For while the Civil War brought great destruction, the post-war era was a time of rebuilding both the structures which Quantrill's raiders had burned to the ground, and also, and I think far more important, rebuilding people's lives. And in this context, I think especially of Lawrence's widows and fatherless children. I understand that 20% of Lawrence's children were fatherless as a result of Quantrill's raid. But our people, and I say our with great pride and deep reverence, our people did put their lives back together. And I'd like to give you 3 examples of Lawrence's rising from the ashes. First, there were the new structures built in the aftermath of Quantrill's raid, especially, I think, the beautiful house that stands here. Every Wednesday night I play softball over here, and of course we relax after the game with a beer in the parking lot. There's no more beautiful sight in Lawrence than this house, illuminated at night thanks to the city of Lawrence. It's very inspirational. Constructed between 1866 and 1869, just 300 yards from this park, Hobbs Park, this wonderful building, I think, is a fitting monument to Lawrence's proud past, as well as to its ongoing struggle, indeed the nation's ongoing struggle for freedom and racial equality. The second legacy, I think, is that John Spear never stopped fighting for freedom and equality. His commitments were truly democratic. Within days of the raid, he was publishing his newspaper again, and he soon set to work to build a beautiful burial ground on the oak-studded hill southeast of town, Oak Hill Cemetery, to reinter the victims of the raid. In later years, Spears was elected to the Kansas State Senate, and he served as the state printer. Upon his death in 1906, one eulogy proclaimed, "Among all the noble men who fought and sacrificed and suffered that Kansas might enter the Union as a free state, none were more faithful and vigilant than John Spear. With voice and pen and with undaunted courage, he stood among the foremost of free state leaders." Third, Lawrence rose from the ashes because it continued to be a beacon of freedom, and many new people came here during the Civil War and afterwards, including African Americans, newly emancipated from enslavement. Indeed, it was on January 1, 1863, just months before Quantrill's raid, that President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all enslaved people in rebel territory would then, thenceforward, and forever be free. Among the first freed people to come to Lawrence after the Emancipation Proclamation were David and Rebecca Brooks Harvey. The Harveys began life in Kansas as sharecroppers, but by the mid-1890s, they owned 100 acres of land near Blue Mound. Also by then, their 3 sons had graduated from KU. One son became a lawyer, another a medical doctor, and the third son stayed in Kansas to take over the family farm. But it was becoming clear, I think, in the early years of the 20th century, that the zealous pursuit of freedom and equality was waning in Lawrence. 3 black men were lynched by a white mob in 1882, hanged from the Kaw River Bridge for all to see. Abolitionists like John Spear were dying of old age, and for its part, KU was succumbing to racism. In the 1890s, all 3 Harvey sons had lettered in varsity sports at KU. Just a few years later, however, as racism swept the KU campus in the 1920s, the university's chancellor segregated African American students and excluded them from all extracurricular activities, including intercollegiate sports. Not until the 1950s would this change. In one of its most humiliating actions, KU waived the swimming requirement for African American students in order to keep them out of the university pool. Blacks could swim in the pool, but only on the last day of the month, after which it was drained, cleaned, and refilled for the white students. Sherman Harvey, again one of the sons, who practiced law in the Philippines for 20 years, returned to Kansas in the 1920s to find KU and Lawrence to be dramatically changed. People whom he had called his mentors now turned their backs on him. I found a marked and humiliating contrast, he wrote in his journal, to these conditions 35 years later as a member of a committee to protest the unjust segregation and discrimination against colored students, advocated and defended by the chancellor, who claims to be a descendant of abolitionists. For Lawrence, the history of the struggle for freedom and equality began in the 1850s and 1860s and grew to great strength before the town capitulated to racism from 1900 to the 1950s. What is important today is that we keep the struggle and the ideal alive. The freedom movement that began in Lawrence during the most critical period in American history has been continued over the years by others in Lawrence. by the members of the Congress of Racial Equality at KU in the 1940s, by Chancellor Franklin Murphy and the Lawrence League for the Practice of Democracy in the 1950s, by Jesse Milan, Joanne Hurst, and John Spearman in the 1960s, and by many others since then. But sadly, as we know, the struggle is far from over. Interestingly, over the years, members of racist terrorist groups such as the KKK have taken what they called the Oath of Quantrill, proclaiming we regard as enemies all aliens, Negroes, Jews, and cults and creeds believing in racial equality. And just this past Friday, as I'm sure a lot of you noticed, a letter to the editor was published in the journal World from Quantrill's great-great-grandson, who wrote that in 1863, Lawrence, which he called the lair of the most extreme and bloodthirsty among the Federalist guerrillas, got just what it deserved. So the struggle begun by John Brown and John Spear is not over, far from it, but we can derive hope, I think, from Lawrence's history when it rose again from the ashes of 1863. For as Lawrence's most famous native son, Langston Hughes, himself the grandson of dedicated abolitionists, has written, "We have tomorrow right before us like a flame." So let me conclude by saying that the Hobbs Park Memorial, which we dedicate today, not only honors Lawrence's proud abolitionist history, but also serves as a reminder of the continuing need to fight for freedom and racial equality, both in Lawrence and throughout the United States. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this historic day.
The St. Luke AME Church Choir will sing "Walk Together, Children." A lifelong Kansan, Congressman Dennis Moore graduated from the University of Kansas and the Washburn University School of Law. He served as the District Attorney of Johnson County, where he established the office's Victim Assistance Unit. On November 7, 2000, Representative Moore was re-elected to a second term as the 3rd District Congressman in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he serves on the House Financial Services Committee, the Science Committee, and the Budget Committee. Congressman Moore has been a good friend at the Hobbs Park Memorial. Please help me present Representative Dennis Moore.
Good evening. Hey, this is going to be interactive. Good evening. Good evening. I am very, very honored to be here this evening and glad to be with you. And we're gathered here tonight, as you've heard from several speakers, and you're still going to hear from one of my personal heroes, Reverend Cleaver. That word, yes, he is. We're here tonight to talk about and celebrate and save a portion of Lawrence's, the city of Lawrence's rich and diverse history. From the bloody struggles of the 1850s and the 1860s up until the 1960s, Lawrence really has occupied a center spot in this nation, I think, in our struggle for freedom. I was a student at the University of Kansas in the 1960s when the civil rights struggle was in its bloom. And of course, back in the bleeding Kansas times, the 1850s and 1860s, and on up for the next 100 years, we saw this happen over and over again. This evening, though, we're here to honor and preserve and celebrate Lawrence's history, because truly, the history of Lawrence is the history of our state and is the history of our nation. Less than a decade after Lawrence was founded, the city of Lawrence was burned to the ground and virtually destroyed, and yet, as you've heard from Professor Tuttle, it rose from the ashes. The people in Kansas back in the 1850s and 60s had a choice to be either a free state or a slave state, and they chose freedom. And so tonight, we're here to honor and to memorialize the people, the early founders of our state, and the people who struggled for freedom in our state. You know, just last November, there was a national election, and we had a new president elected. That really was please forgive. In the several weeks after the election evening, up until the time that Vice President Gore conceded, I received about 700 contacts with our office, telephones, emails, and letters asking me to contact Vice President Gore, presumably because I'm a Democrat, and ask him to withdraw. Well, he wouldn't have listened to me anyway. But, and I'd like to believe that either one of those gentlemen would have done the right thing after the Supreme Court handed down its decision, because we are a nation of laws. And, as importantly, we have seen, and I told people when I wrote back to them as a response to their contact to our office, I predict on January 20, there will be a peaceful transfer of power. There will not be blood in the streets. There won't be a single shot fired. And that's what happened in the United States of America. I think all of you will agree with me that we live in the greatest country in the whole world. And we have, and we possess, and we cherish some of the greatest personal and political freedoms of any peoples in the whole world. In fact, I believe that we are the envy of most people around this world. And so again, it's a tribute to the founders of Lawrence and the people who struggled so long and hard for freedom that we are where we are tonight, celebrating this memorial. Now, in addition to being the greatest country in the whole world and having some of the greatest personal and political freedoms, I think we've seen back just 40 years ago, that people in this country couldn't vote simply because of the color of their skin. So as far as we've come as a nation and as a people, we still have a ways to go. And we're going to get there together. But it's going to take places like this to remind us of our history so we don't ever repeat it. Thank you all. Let's celebrate tonight. Thank you.
Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver has served as pastor of the St. James United Methodist Church in Kansas City, Missouri for 25 years. He served as Kansas City, Missouri's mayor for 2 terms and was the first African American to hold that office. Much of Reverend Cleaver's work, both in the pulpit and in public office, centers on social concerns. While mayor of Kansas City, he established a task force on race relations and appointed more women and minorities to boards and commissions than any of his predecessors. During the Clinton administration, he served as a special urban advisor to U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Andrew Cuomo. Among numerous awards and distinction, Reverend Cleaver was named one of Ebony Magazine's 100 Most Influential African Americans, and he won that award for 7 consecutive years. Please help me in extending a warm Lawrence welcome to a Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver.
It is a pleasure to come here today, particularly to have the opportunity to by Councilman Moore, who I and my the nation can benefit from. And I hope that he will represent us for a long time. His kind of consummate unification to recognize that one is ago, listen to you began this as a person and already as a courage to the mission and last embassy that are coming back this way. This is so long. And I want to talk about it is not pretty the city to in that. And we can do this. This is a thing. This is good. A thing that is taking place. Right? There's a thing. Do you get it now? This is good. This is wholesome. Because we are daring to remember and daring to dedicate that which we remember. But the question today is not whether John Spear is here or that he even came. I think we take history and stir it around and come out with something that can make us better. And so the question is, what if we had not come? What if we had not come? That is a point of interrogation that each individual and even this nation should entertain every now and then. What if we had not come? As painful as it is, I go through that myself. I raise the question, not every day, not every week, not even every month, but every now and then, I raise the question, what if I had not come? What if Emmanuel Cleaver had not come into existence? I know that my oldest sister would have been happier if I had not come. And I'm not ashamed to mention it. I know she would have been infinitely happier if I had not come. I grew up at a time when parents raised children as opposed to financing them. And so I had to accompany my oldest sister on any date that involved an automobile. And so I would, on a cool summer Sunday like this, ask, where are we going? And so I know that she would have been happier if we had not come. I don't know him personally. Many of you may at least be familiar with his biography. I only know him through my readings, and that is J.C. Penney. I know that he would have been happier if I had not come. During the summer of my 11th grade entry, I worked in Wichita Falls, Texas for the Barnes Maintenance Company, and my job was to clean up at the SAC base at Shepherd Air Force Base, the Strategic Air Command. And I had a government pass, a badge. And I showed it to my sisters and told them it gave me authority over them. But every day I would go out to the SAC base and clean the bathrooms and sweep the floors. And then one Saturday night, as I was getting dressed to go to Billy Vasher's party, you don't know Billy, I was getting dressed. I had put on my stiffly starched khaki pants, my red bandolin shirt, and red bandolin socks to match. I had sprinkled JDs behind each ear, and I was ready to party heartily. And then the telephone rang. It was Mr. Barnes, who owned the janitorial service where I worked, and he said, I'm going to need you tonight to go to the J.C. Penney store to clean up because we had a worker who did not show up. And knowing my father, there was no way that he would put a party ahead of work, and so I went back to my room, removed my stiffly starched khaki pants, my red bandolin shirt and socks, wiped the JDs from behind my ear, put on my work clothes, and went down to the J.C. Penney store and began to clean. And after about an hour and a half, I became livid that all of my friends were out partying, and there I was cleaning up the store of a man I did not even know. And so for the next 2 hours, I walked up and down the aisles of the J.C. Penney store, changing the price tags on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items. And so on Monday morning, when the J.C. Penney store opened, you could buy a pound of gold earrings for 19 cents. You could buy a J.C. Penney washer and dryer for $1.98, or buy one, get one free. You could buy women's underwear, $529 installed. And so I know that at least Mr. J.C. Penney would not appreciate the fact that I came into existence. But on a day like this, as we are thinking about history and making this necessary dedication, for us to raise that question, what if we had not come? What if we had not come? Langston Hughes, in his first published piece, wrote of dreaming of rivers. He said, I've known rivers as ancient as the flow of human blood through human veins. I've known rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut along the Congo and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing down the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went to New Orleans. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul grows deep like the rivers. This man, Langston Hughes, contributed a great deal that all of us can learn from, because as he began to write during what we know today as the Harlem Renaissance, he challenged other African American poets to write out of their experience and not to deny or even try to get people to believe that they were not African American. He said, write out of your experience. Compose from your experience. It will be richer. In those days, many of the African American poets were trying to write poetry that would not in any way give the reader the belief or the knowledge that the writer was black, because to do so meant that it would be thrown on the junk pile of poetry. But Langston Hughes said, I will not avoid writing from my ethnicity. I am African American, I will write from that experience. Well, that reminds me of Jacob. For those of you who are a part of either of the two out of the three monotheistic religions, Christianity and Judaism, you know the story. Jacob wrestled all night in the Jabbok River with a phantom. And as the day was breaking, Jacob's leg was cracked. But he held on to this mysterious foe. And the foe spoke to him and said, day is coming, let me go. To which Jacob said, I will not let you go until I get my blessing. In other words, if I am going to fight you all night and end up with a broken leg, I want a blessing out of it. I am not going to turn you loose until my blessing comes. And that's exactly what we need to do as a community and as a nation. Slavery was ugly, it was vile, it was vicious, it's misused an entire race of people, and then it misused the people who were using them. You see, in oppression, two groups are hurt, the oppressed and the oppressor.
All right. All right.
And so we 100 years later don't want to even talk about slavery. We don't even want to talk about race relations. That is, my friends, shallow.
All right. All right.
We ought to hold on to the history, regardless of how ugly it is, until we get our blessing from it. And I would dare say, we have not gotten the blessing yet, we are getting it. And I reject any African American, and there are some who would suggest that things are not getting better. I have heard friends of mine, there are leaders around the nation who say things are not getting better. To that, I politely say bunk. Let me say to you, even in Lawrence, even in Kansas, a free state, 50 years ago, this would not have taken place. 50 years ago, there wouldn't have been a black man standing before you who was mayor of Missouri's largest city. 50 years ago, whites would not come to this spot to talk about black contributions. 50 years ago, we would not have lifted up the Buffalo Soldiers 50 years ago. People haven't heard of it. Let us hold on to it until our blessing comes. Now, your mission, should you accept, is to raise the question about yourself. Reverend, is it all right if I talk about God just for a moment? God has been better to this nation than any nation on the planet, including Israel. Think about this. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, we are without an enemy that matters. We've already defeated Grenada. There are no enemies to challenge our superiority. There is no evil empire. There is no Soviet Union. No nation on earth would dare challenge the military might of the United States of America. And at the same time, even though the economy is slipping a little, we are still running an economy at full throttle. There's a person here right now who knew 10 years ago that they would be making the kind of money they're making. Not one. Now, to show you how well we're doing economically, I stopped at a little convenience store on my way to buy a drink. And the drink cost 79 cents. I only had 70 cents. And instead of breaking $1, the lady said, just get 4 cents out of the little cup. Customers come in and leave money in cups for folk they don't even know. Now you tell me this nation is in a depression. But maybe God has given us an open window to get it together. Maybe this time is that rare moment in the history of a nation where the people can fix it. We can. We must. If every man and every woman could use their own contacts and experiences, little by little, we can change this nation. Now, I grew up in a very, very segregated community in Texas, rigidly segregated. There was no place to go at all. I mean, we couldn't go to the movies, we couldn't go to the drive-ins, we couldn't go any place. And then on Friday nights, at least my father would allow us to stay up, my 3 sisters and me, as late as we wanted. We couldn't stay up on Saturday night late because but Friday nights, we could stay up all night if we wanted. And that was fine with me because at 10:30 after the news, it was Fright Night on Channel 6. And I loved Fright Night. I have 3 sisters, and my 3 sisters would get on one side of the room to watch this old black and white television set with the rabbit ears sitting on top. And I would be on one side of the room, and they would not communicate with me nor have much to do with me during the monster movie, because I'm almost embarrassed to say that this, particularly in the shadows of the University of Kansas, and probably many of you are members of the Kansas intelligentsia, but I cheered for the monsters. And so throughout the movie, my sisters could hear me saying, "Bite him, Drac." I went off to college, went to Prairie View, A&M University, just outside of Houston. And one night during my sophomore year, I was watching television, the television, not my television, the television in the dorm. And the movie was The Return of Dracula. And all of a sudden, God allowed me to have great clarity. For the first time, eureka, I understood why I did not fear the monsters. It was because they were never after black people. Think about it. So I ran to the phone. I had a sister at Tennessee State. I called and said, "You don't have to be scared. I mean, we're safe." I told my other sister who was on the campus with me. But when those movies went off the air, after some insensitive soul had driven a stake through the heart of Dracula, my sisters would run off to bed. But for me, the best was yet to come. I would move over closer and closer to that black and white television set. And I would hear the announcer say, "We've come to the end of another day of broadcasting. Tune in at 6 o'clock a.m. when we will return to the air." The credits would roll up the screen, and then my heart would begin to pound and goose pimples would appear. And in great anticipation, I would almost become breathless until I saw it. A silver jet coming right from the corner of the television set, soaring through what looked like fleecy, almost edible clouds. And then that just right majestic music, string music, would begin to play. And then a golden voice would be heard saying, "Oh, I've lifted the surly bounds of earth and danced the sky on lofted silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and I've done 100 things you never dreamed of. I've wheeled and soared and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up, up the long delirious burning blue, I've climbed the windswept heights where never a lark or even an eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, reached out my hand and touched the face of God." That's called High Flight. It was written by a Canadian Air Force pilot while flying missions over Germany in World War II. His name was John Gillespie McGee. High Flight. And that is exactly what is required right now. It's for us to come to Hobbs Park and to recall the history of the abolitionists, the men and women who, even at a time when everybody thought slavery, thought anti-slavery. High flight is what we need to take. And if we do, our children and even their progeny will look back upon this moment in history and say, at the beginning of the 21st century, there lived a race of Americans who were so committed to making things right that the nation they forged will be here forever. I am the great-great-great-grandson of Frank Harrison Cleaver, a slave, who was owned by Henry Cleaver of Cherokee County, Texas. Many of you are the descendants of slave owners. But now, we are brothers and sisters in a nation that has been greatly blessed. And while we did not come over on the same ship, today we are in the same boat. And we will all either sink or float based on our hearts. Thank you very much.
wade in the water.
God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, it looks like the man that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Why don't you wait in the water? Why don't you wait in the water? Why don't you wait in the water? Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Why don't you wait in the water? Why don't you wait in the water? Why don't you wait in the water? Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the
And now the Reverend Paul Wynn will lead us in the closing prayer.
God bless you. Would you bow your heads? Father, we thank you today for this privilege to come together with all people. We bless and we thank you for your blessings and your presence during this service. And we pray that, Lord, somehow somebody would see that when we think about slavery, we can be reminded that it does not have to be repeated. But we can gain from the knowledge that we have, in fact, made this path of pleasing the Lord our path. And Lord, we ask your blessings upon each and every one. And somehow, as we have celebrated the Hobbs Park dedication, that we will remember, Lord, that it was you that has blessed us. It's you that has brought us together. And it's you that will take care of us even as we disperse. But remember, Lord, we're still asking your help. And we pray that we would be made one. We ask all the blessings upon all of the people that have come on today. And we ask each and every person that they would be blessed today. For we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Wynn, and thank all of you for sharing this wonderful special occasion with us today, which of course will take its place in an important milestone in Lawrence's history. Now, after we have our recession, please stay and enjoy Steve Mason and friends. They just did a great job of giving us wonderful music before we started. And thank you very much for coming. Good evening.
I'm sorry.
Say hello to your dad.
Who is it?
Your daughter.
We're headed off to Europe.
See you later.
I thought it was remarkable. I thought it was amazing. I really did. You should be so proud of your son.
I am. Event here today.
I thought it was quite marvelous, and I am absolutely undone by Cleaver. I thought his speech was just absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much. Of today's event.
Oh, just fabulous. It's great. Mark did a great job. Everybody putting the whole thing together. It's a great event. Wonderful time for the community to come together.
Thank you very much. Of today's event.
I really enjoyed it. We were talking about that we hadn't sat and listened to good oratory, and that's for a long time, and that's what this was. You know, really hearing people who had been thoughtful about what they wanted to say and making us think about our history. And again, that's the, I think, purpose of having this memorial is for us to rethink our past.
Thank you very much. And what do you think of today's event?
I thought it was awesome. Just great.
Thank you very much. Think of today's event.
I was so happy for Cap when I saw everyone standing up. I thought it was good. It was what it needs, and it's what the house needed. Oh my God, it was such a great turnout. So it was nice to see everyone. Nice to see it kind of culminate. I mean, it sounds like it's never going to be done, but it was good to see Cap thanked by all those people. I was really happy.
Thank you very much. What do you think of today's event?
Oh, it was beautiful. Something to behold. Something we all need to know. And God bless you.
Thank you very much. What the?
I was worried he wasn't going to come, and I guess he was here all the time.
Sure.
event too.
Mr. B fan? Oh, I do. Yeah.
40-year-old house in East Lawrence over the weekend drew dozens of people. For project directors, the Hobbs Park Memorial dedication was the culmination of 4 years of long, hard work. They moved a Civil War-era house from 909 Pennsylvania to Hobbs Park, the former site of abolitionist newspaperman John Spear's homes. Spear published the first newspaper in Lawrence and was an outspoken opponent of slavery. Today, the house stands as a reminder of Lawrence's humble beginnings.
This Hobbs Park Memorial dedication is really to remember the people who founded Lawrence, who founded Lawrence as the first area in a free state and not a slave.
The man. Okay, real good.
Got it down.
That's the electronic particle ripping. You heard that little cracking noise? It's electronic particle movements right. Much about, I'm going to ask Tuttle about this. Do you know if very many of these, very many slaves actually ended up having to work in actual industrial settings? Like industrial settings?
Well, I don't know. I guess they worked around the shop gyms and shit.
Well, that's one thing.
I mean, real heavy
like a mill.
Yeah, I don't know, like during the war.
On the low end, you know, like blacksmithing and that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about 10 hours a day.
Somebody must have worked in the southern
taking too long to shop.
Having a good time. They just made him hobby.
Well, you know, a real cynical. POs, orange cans. Listen, is
This, when did you live in this house, Mark?
74 to 77.
And it's ready for the ashes, huh? Okay. What street is this?
New York Street.
New York Street. Okay. How old are some of these houses? 120 and 130 years. Old church, huh? Well, I'm still here. Terrific show, Mark. Great day, Sunday. Really enjoyed it. Glad I came. And it looks like everything's going to work. So, see you next time with a new project. Adios.
You like my new sidewalk?
Yeah. That Hobbs house is not too far from Mark's. Here it is. Almost next door. Flowery trees right in front.
See if I can take a picture of the bird.
Mark,
Huh?
behind the sprinkling water.
So an auto iris?
See anything?
Yeah.
A picture of your car next time you clean it all up. Did you get it working?
Yeah.
Oh. You're going from one house to the other, huh? Where are you? Come on. Where are you?
Go there.
Your lawnmower? And this is the house that Jack built.
We built this ourselves. You want to mow the lawn?
No, not me. Can't do that.
Get some shots of the new porch. she was going to contact Ernie and set up a time to go over there, and then I was going to, you know, whenever they can make the time, I'll we can go. At the house, thanks for coming over to Lawrence to visit our dedication. It's been 4.5 years since we started the project here. You can see it's almost done. We got some mud out here. We're raking the ground around. That was the security agency was here. We're going to try to put a high-tech system in to protect the house from vandalism. In a few minutes, the architects and the contractors are coming out. We're trying to figure out what we've got left to do here. And we're going to try to raise a little bit more money so we can finish the project as soon as possible. So I can get out from under. Hopefully I'll get the money back that I got invested in it. Anyway, Dad, thanks for coming over. And now we got a good home movie of the house and the dedication ceremony. So I'll see you back in Las Vegas. All right? Bye. All right, we're rolling.
Well, this is the last day. And
maybe you better come.
Well, Mark, I'm leaving tomorrow. It's been a great week. Really, I didn't expect anything like this to happen. It was the presentation was fabulous. Everything, the posters, the cards, the tickets, the fans, and the people. Gee, what a crowd. What an honor to be here. And I'm really proud of you. Your mother and I are really proud of you. You followed this thing through in spite of everything, of everybody trying to discourage you. And here you come up with a fantastic show that everybody appreciated, especially when you got up there on the platform and they clapped and they clapped. Really, man, I was going crazy just sitting there. I didn't think it would happen. So here it is. The building has started. The project isn't through, but I'm sure everything's going to turn out for the best. Everybody's interested now, the publicity you got, and the way you're going about doing it and getting it done. So, man, good luck for the rest of the way. It isn't going to be as bad as it was now. You can coast a little and maybe give some of the work to some of the other guys so you can get back and start making a living that you can eat. So, bigger and better things, and you know I love you and appreciate everything you've done this week and enjoyed myself. And I'm going back to Vegas with all these fantastic thoughts and beautiful tape of the whole activity. So, see you again when you make another big presentation, maybe, if I'm still able to operate. And good luck, Mark.
Okay, it's getting hot. It rained last night an inch.
Ah, shit, it didn't work. This one didn't work.
I'll call you in a while. Okay? Okay. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. Get all the electricity in Russia's going off. We'll take a picture of Jim walking up here.
Yeah. Damn.
Get a picture of my house?
Yeah.
like the shot you always see on the news to this physician walking down the street
Right,
where he tells what he's...
Then he's got a
All right,
talking head.
come on right up here and say something here to the camera.
Hi, boys.
You're in the dark there. Turn towards the sun there.
Hey, get him over to
Here,
the
come
house
here.
behind him there so he can drink.
Wait a minute.
Well, good to see you. I hope you have a good trip back to Las Vegas. Nobody won the Powerball. 250 million. It's the news of the day.
Huh?
Did you pan it from one house to the other?
Yeah.
Shows how the little house. Yeah, I'm making a shot there.
Well, they're planting those olive trees anymore. The city don't do it. Really ever. Those olive trees rushing out.
They're not taking care of it. They were here when I bought the house.
Not many of the town.
The ADT guys, they're pretty performance. Good, they got one of the sword races.